The year 1943. British military men are looking at a tank that rises 3.5 meters in height like a fucking giraffe. Inside, 2 people lie face down and try not to vomit their insides. Designer Ernest Tapp spent 6 years creating a machine that was supposed to shoot from behind walls and bushes while remaining invisible. Instead, he got 5 tons of iron that gave the crew seasickness on dry land. And the main test is still ahead. To understand where this idea came from, one needs to go back 25 years. World War I, the Western Front. A positional slaughter where machine gunners lived exactly until the moment they poked out above the cover. You are in a trench 2 meters deep. Before you is a machine gun and ahead is no man's land. You see only what is at eye level or lower. Everything is behind trench walls, behind hedges, behind ruins, a dark spot. To check if the enemy is approaching, one must rise. And this is exactly what German snipers are waiting for. Machine gunners died by the hundreds at the very moment of rising above the cover. The Germans specifically deployed marksmen who watched for hours for movement above British trenches. Stick your head out for 3 seconds, bullet in the forehead. These losses were repeated again and again, and in the heads of the people who went through that war, one thought got stuck. There must be a way to shoot over obstacles without exposing oneself to enemy fire. This idea did not let go even after the war. Tapp returned home and became a co-founder of the company County Commercial Cars, producing commercial vehicles. Business was going not badly, but memories of the war gave him no peace, especially the fact that most often it wasn't the attack that killed, but the necessity to lean out of cover. For years, he pondered how to give a soldier the ability to fire while remaining protected. How to lift the armament above an obstacle without lifting the shooter. By the middle of the 30s, the concept had finally formed. The war in Europe had not yet begun, but everyone understood it was a question of time. Hitler was openly spitting on the Treaty of Versailles, and the British Army was feverishly modernizing. In July 1937, Tapp patented his idea. The essence of the invention sounded simple and revolutionary. A low-profile machine on tracks hides behind any obstacles, walls, hedges, shrubbery, even tall grass. In the lowered state, the machine blends in with the terrain, and then magic happens. A hydraulic mechanism lifts a long section upwards. The shooter gets a view and the opportunity to fire. The enemy sees only a tiny target the size of a human head, while the rest of the machine remains low and hidden. After completing the task, the section lowers and the machine departs unnoticed. On paper, it looked brilliant. The concept offered huge tactical advantages. The machine sneaks up to enemy positions using the folds of the terrain. It quickly rises, fires a burst, and hides. Enemy machine gunners simply do not have time to react, and, most importantly, the crew is safe. This solution could save the lives of hundreds of machine gunners. Tapp was not just a dreamer. He was an engineer and the owner of an enterprise producing automobiles. He had an understanding of mechanics, access to production, and his own money. The government in peacetime would hardly finance such an experimental development. That meant one needed to act independently. The development of the detailed design began. What hydraulics to use, how to ensure stability with the raised compartment, where to place the crew. Every element required work, and with every calculation, it became clear that the machine would turn out very strange. Towards the end of the 30s, Germany seized Austria, then Czechoslovakia. War hung in the air. The British Army was urgently preparing for conflict. A window of opportunity appeared for a revolutionary weapon. If TAP creates a working prototype, he has a chance to get a military order, a chance to embody a dream of 20 years ago, a chance to save the lives of machine gunners. The decision is made. TAP invests his own funds into building the first sample. The risk is huge. If the military refuses, the money is thrown away. But he believed in the idea and set to work on the machine that would go down in history as one of the strangest tanks of the Second World War. The base for the first prototype became a separate experimental tracked chassis. A light platform with thin tracks and 4 road wheels. Simple, compact, verifiable on the move. No frills, only the necessary minimum. The task of the first sample was to prove the technical feasibility of the idea. On the chassis, they installed the main element, the hydraulic lifting mechanism. The technology was understandable, but the question remained. Would the system withstand the weight of the structure and armament while maintaining stability? Calculations showed it should hold. They designed the frame, installed the cylinders. It remained to solve the toughest problem: where to place the human. The logic was ironclad. The machine must be maximally low in the lowered state to hide behind any covers. If you seat the operator, the silhouette becomes too tall. The only option is the lying position. TAP decided to go all the way. The operator must lie face down, directly in the rising section. A human on their stomach in a metal box that soars several meters upward together with the weapon assembly. Try right now to lie face down and lift your head to look forward. 1 minute, the neck goes stiff. 5 minutes is genuinely painful. And now add driving a tracked machine, observing the battlefield, and shooting. An ergonomic nightmare embedded in the very foundation. For observation, they installed a periscopic instrument. Lying on his stomach, the operator looked into the periscope while simultaneously controlling the machine. Levers and pedals were located under his body. The weapon was mounted in a small cylindrical cap on top. It was precisely a weapon assembly and not a fully inhabited turret. All this seemed reasonable on blueprints. Understanding the problem of shooting from a rocking platform, TAP tried to resolve the issue of fire stability structurally so that aiming would not turn into roulette due to vibrations and jerks. On paper, it looked well thought out. On the proving ground, it turned out that paper is not in command here. Assembly took several months. County Commercial Cars used its capacities to manufacture components according to TAP's drawings: chassis, hydraulic cylinders, lifting mechanism, weapon helmet. The prototype was ready for trials. When the machine was rolled out onto the site and the hydraulics were switched on for the first time, everyone understood that the name was chosen perfectly. In the lowered state, the prototype looked squat and nondescript. But as soon as the lift was launched, the transformation began. The section slowly stretched upwards. The weapon assembly rose above the chassis. The machine turned into a mechanical insect. The tank in the raised state looked exactly like a praying mantis. An iron body on tracks frozen with a raised weapon helmet. The resemblance was so obvious that no other name variants were even discussed. The machine became the Mantis. The first tests began. TAP himself lay in the prototype and checked all systems. The hydraulics worked smoothly without jerks. The chassis coped with the load. The machine drove, turned, could move even with the raised section. In technical terms, the concept proved that this is not a fantasy. It drives. There were problems, of course. Driving while lying down turned out to be hellishly difficult. It was hard to simultaneously control levers and pedals. The view through the periscope was limited. The body position was torturous even for a short test. But the key thing was proven. The machine can be built, it moves, rises, and can fire. It is time to show the military. Soon after the start of the Second World War, TAP organized a demonstration for the War Office. The time was nervous. Britain was looking for any ideas that could give an advantage, even in theory. Let's just have a look. Any fresh designs were considered seriously. Officers arrived at the proving ground. TAP showed the Mantis in action. The machine drove up to an obstacle, smoothly raised the section to the maximum height, simulated firing, lowered, and departed behind cover. The concept was understood immediately. The question of practicality remained. The officers asked technical questions, studied the design, demanded repeated demonstrations from different angles. TAP explained the tactical advantages. Minimal silhouette at the bottom, the ability to fire from above without sticking the torso out, a smaller, visible target for return fire. The military men listened, took notes, nodded, and then asked to test the controls themselves. And here a catastrophe happened. The very first officer who lay in the machine, after 5 minutes of attempts at control, climbed out with a red face and shortness of breath. The second held out a little longer, but the result was the same. The third could not even normally catch the controls while lying down. The problem became obvious to everyone. One person is physically incapable of stably pulling the entire volume of tasks simultaneously. Lying on one's stomach, one needs to guide the machine over uneven terrain, control the lifting and lowering, monitor the situation through the periscope, aim, and shoot. 5 critically important functions. In parallel, in a position that is in itself already a punishment. Physiology finished off the remnants of working capacity. In the face-down position, blood rushes to the head, pressure rises, dizziness begins. The neck is constantly tense from the necessity to keep the head raised for the view in the periscope. Arms tire quickly from the unnatural angle of working with controls. The shaking of the machine on the move amplifies all this nightmare. The testers climbed out with numb limbs and complaints of nausea. The military conducted a series of tests with different people, from novices to experienced mechanics. The result did not change. After 10 to 15 minutes, a person lost the ability to effectively control the machine. In real combat, this meant total unfitness. The verdict of the War Office was harsh and unequivocal. The single-seat configuration is unacceptable. One person cannot normally control the Mantis. Project rejected. But TAP did not give up. Representatives of the War Office offered a compromise. Build a 2-seat version. One person drives the machine, the second fires. Divide the duties between 2 crew members. If TAP can realize this, the project will receive support. For the inventor, this was a chance to save the ideas. Yes, the first prototype failed. Yes, one had to admit the mistake in estimating human capabilities, but the concept remained alive. The military did not simply wave away the strange machine. They saw a rational grain in it and were ready to give a second chance. TAP agreed immediately. He understood that this was the last opportunity to embody the dream of 20 years ago. It was necessary to create a completely new prototype, larger, with space for 2 people with a thoughtful distribution of functions. And for this, a different base was required. The first prototype on the Carden-Lloyd chassis was too small and primitive to accommodate 2 crew members with all necessary equipment. A proven platform with a reliable engine, tested running gear, and sufficient space for modifications was needed, and such a platform existed. The universal carrier was a legend of the British Army. Since the year 1934, this machine had been produced in Great Britain, Canada, and Australia, more than 110,000 units. The most mass-produced armored vehicle in history. Simple, reliable, universal, hence the name, an ideal foundation for a crazy experiment. The universal carrier was used everywhere: infantry transporter, machine gun carrier, artillery tractor, reconnaissance platform, evacuator of the wounded, from North Africa to the Pacific Ocean, from the snows of Russia to the jungles of Burma. The machine proved its reliability in any conditions. TAP chose it as the base for the second Mantis. The advantages were obvious. A proven Ford V8 engine with a power of 85 horsepower, enough to transport the enlarged structure. Reliable running gear with a track-turning control system. Enough space to place the hydraulics, 2 crew members, and armament. Everything necessary to embody the improved concept. Work began on the second prototype. It was the year 1941. The war was in full swing, but TAP received permission to continue development. The War Office did not give official funding, but did not hinder either. The inventor got a second chance to prove the viability of the idea. Designing took time. It was necessary to completely rethink the layout. Now, 2 people had to be accommodated in the rising section, the driver and the gunner. Both still lying face down, because that was the only way to preserve a low silhouette. But now each answered only for their own functions. The driver concentrated exclusively on controlling the machine and the lifting hydraulics. The gunner occupied himself with observation, aiming, and firing. The division of duties was supposed to solve the main problem of the first prototype. At least, so it was planned. The construction turned out complex. The lower hull with the engine and running gear from the universal carrier. On it, a long metal box named the control chamber, where 2 crew members were placed lying down. Above the chamber, a section called the head, which could independently rotate for precise aiming. And at the very top, a helmet with 2 Bren machine guns. The armament was chosen as standard for the British Army. 2 Bren machine guns of caliber 7.7 millimeters. A reliable, proven weapon that was used everywhere. Magazine-fed, sufficient rate of fire, good accuracy. For the role of a mobile firing point, quite suitable. The hydraulic system allowed lifting the entire structure, the control chamber, the head, and the helmet, to an angle of up to 55 degrees. The maximum lifting height was 3 meters and 48 centimeters. That is 11.5 feet. Sufficient to shoot over most walls, hedges, and ruins. In the lowered state, the machine was lower than human height. The assembly of the second prototype stretched out for 2 years. The war demanded all resources. Production capacities worked on military orders. Materials were in deficit. But by the year 1943, the machine was ready. The second Mantis, weighing 5 tons, waited for its hour. TAP looked at the result of many years of work. The machine turned out even stranger than the first prototype. A long metal box on tracks that could stretch upwards like the neck of a giraffe. The resemblance to an insect became even more glaring. It remained to verify if the 2-seat layout had solved the fatal problem of the first version. The year 1943. A proven ground in Great Britain. The second Mantis is ready for trials. TAP hoped that the 2-seat layout had solved the fatal problem of the first prototype. The trials showed the opposite. The first tests began promisingly. The machine drove, The hydraulics worked smoothly. The lifting mechanism raised the control chamber to 3.5 meters without problems. The driver controlled the movement, the gunner fired. The division of duties seemed to work, but this was only the beginning. The military testers conducted a series of short tests on level ground. The machine drove up to an obstacle, rose, simulated shooting, lowered. The concept functioned technically. A small target above the cover. The crew protected below. Then trials on cross-country terrain began. When the machine moved over uneven ground with the compartment raised, the control chamber began to sway from side to side. The hydraulic system was not designed to compensate for lateral loads from shaking. The long metal box at a height of 3 meters swung like a pendulum, and at the base lay 2 people, and they were shaken like pears on a branch. TAP tried to find a solution. Reinforce the hydraulics for stabilization, change the attachment point, add shock absorbers. The military gave time for refinements, but physics cannot be fooled. A long lever, when moving over irregularities, will sway. Trials continued for months. Different routes, speeds, crews. They tried moving only in the lowered state, raising the chamber at stops. But what then was the point? The tank was created for shooting on the move from behind cover, and not for stopping before every shot. Besides seasickness, other problems crawled out. Control remained difficult. The view through periscopes was lousy. Armor was symbolic. Thin metal protected against bullets but not against shrapnel. The vulnerability of the machine in combat was obvious. The military conducted a tactical analysis. Even without the swaying, the combat value was dubious. The machine required driving right up to the obstacle, stopping, raising the chamber, aiming, shooting. In that time, an ordinary tank would have already driven past the obstacle and destroyed the target. The year 1944. The Allies are preparing for the landing in Normandy, and the British Army makes a decision. The Mantis project is officially closed. Too many compromises, too few advantages. For TAP, this was the end of a dream. 7 years since the patent, 2 prototypes, countless hours of work. The idea from the trenches of the First World War never materialized into a working weapon. The first prototype went to scrap metal. The second was transferred to the Tank Museum in Bovington, where it is still considered one of the strangest exhibits of the collection. The irony is that TAP's idea was right. The concept of elevating armament was later successfully applied by other machines like the FV-1620 Humber Hornet with anti-tank missiles, but without a crew in the lifting part. TAP was right about the problem and the solution, but his implementation, putting people face down in a swaying box at a 3-meter height, turned out to be a catastrophe. If you like this story, hit like, write in the comments what other useless technology you want to hear about, and subscribe so as not to miss new videos.